Hello everyone, this is Danielle Cho, current Outreach Director and incoming President for Scope PHA. This video is the first of our alumni spotlights, and today I'm joined by one of our wonderful alumni, Alex Wu. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Alex graduated in 2024 with a BS in Neuroscience and a BA in Design Media Arts. He joined Scope PHA in 2020, was the Design Director for the 2021 to 2022 academic year, the Transitional Care Director for the 2022-2023 academic year, and the External Vice President for the 2023 to 2024 academic year. He joined a research lab led by Professor Sotiris Masmanidis in his sophomore year of college and was accepted into the UCLA MGen Scholars Program for the summer of 2023, was awarded the Life Science Dean's Award for Neuroscience Research Scheibel Scholars in 2023 to 2024, which funds outstanding students in the undergraduate neuroscience IDP, and participated in the integrated and interdisciplinary undergraduate research program.
And thank you for the gracious introduction. I'm surprised you knew some of that stuff.
I Googled it. But you're obviously very accomplished. A lot of research, a lot of involvement, and of course, an integral part of PHA. So I'm so glad we get to kick off the first of our Alumni Spotlight series with you. So
thanks for having me.
Perfect. So for our first question, to start out, since you graduated last year, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and what the next several years will look like for you?
Sure, yeah. So I graduated UCLA last year, so June of 2024. And at this point, I've been working full-time in a research position with the functional neurosurgery section at the National Institutes of Health. And so that would be the main Bethesda campus. I do full-time research. I work with epilepsy patients looking at the intracranial signals of memory and decision making. And so it's been a wonderful experience, and all of that leads to, because I'm interested in becoming a physician scientist or getting an MD, PhD. So a lot of what I'm doing now is research. What's coming up is research. Headed to med school. Super excited for what's next. But that's what I've been up to.
Perfect. If you're at liberty to share which medical school you're headed to, would you?
Right now, the University of Washington. I'll be starting their MD, PhD program this summer.
Oh my gosh, congratulations, Alex.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. Oh my gosh, wait, like huge congrats.
Thank you.
Dang. Oh my gosh. How are you feeling? Like, when did you get the news? And
I got the news.
Yeah.
I got the news back in February, I think. And so each school is kind of different. Some schools make you wait a long time. UW is very, they're very professional with it. They actually get to you like the following weekend. So they're very fast, and once you're done, it's kind of a huge relief off your shoulders.
It's huge.
Yeah,
Oh
but
my gosh.
that was my first impression. So
Okay, wait, you came to one of Scope PHA's alumni panels. I think
yeah,
it's been early winter quarter.
early winter. I hadn't interviewed yet at that point, actually.
Okay. So so then after that, you got the news, and wow, oh my gosh, huge
Yeah.
congrats. That's so exciting.
Thank you. I think the interview was literally the day after. So
Whoa.
I was going to be on West Coast time anyway. So
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Okay, wait, that's so funny. So you were like on that Zoom with us doing our alumni panel at night, and then the next day you were like, gotta do the interview.
Yeah, but because it's the West Coast, I stay up a little later, but I get to get up a little later too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it evens out.
I also wanted to ask a little bit about your background. So, like where you grew up, any major milestones or events that influenced your path to this like MD, PhD track today, and any major influences. So, anything you'd like to share.
Sure, yeah. I think a lot of this sort of research focus as well as this medicine focus started in high school. Though to be fair, like you know, as a high schooler, I still didn't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing now either, but I think a lot of the jumping off point was starting. There was a class at my high school that was like focused on. It was called STEM research, but it was focused a lot on allowing high schoolers to sort of pilot their own experiment. Sort of for the local science fairs that would be held. And that was my first start. I remember I think like my sophomore year, I tried submitting a proposal on like biofilms, but I had no idea what a BSL-2 lab was at that point. And so, as you might imagine, a high school is not equipped for BSL-2 safety. Um, but that's sort of where I got started. I actually did the program the year after and did a very rudimentary model of like the glymphatic system in the brain. So it's a series of vessels that's theorized to help clear away a lot of the waste in the brain that was sort of recently discovered that time. Um, but I did a very crude model. I thought, that was super fun, super interesting. In hindsight, the model is really bad, but again, all models are bad. Some are useful. But that was sort of my start, and that got me interested in research. That got me interested in, biology in general, and realizing I can use that to work with people in medicine. Sort of jump started everything. So I have a lot to thank to, I guess, that high school teacher that I had, as well as, just a lot of these mentor figures along the way.
Wow, so sounds like your interest like kind of started pretty early actually, like research. You knew you were interested in research since high school. So I actually like when you came to college, was that what were your thoughts then? Were you planning on pursuing a PhD or did you know at all?
Sure, yeah. First off, in high school, I thought, I just thought research was cool. I thought people, who did it were like, you know, it was like this mythical idea of science that's like, oh, fancy, equipment and state-of-the-art labs. You also realize in college that's not always the case. It's not all like glass buildings like you see in the movies. Like it's like Eureka, and they what use a pipette one sample and they're like, whoa, it's like that's how it works. But yeah, I think in college I want to build off that. I didn't really know what I would be doing. I think, the computational neuroscience angle that I've taken wasn't something I had really thought about in high school. I hadn't really thought about like doing a PhD either at that point. I think the MD was more focused because I want to work with people, and that's a big part. I didn't want to work necessarily only in the lab. But I think college again, my goal was to explore, and so, trying a lot of different things like PHA, like, the Mass Communities Lab, and they've done a lot for me. I'm very gracious for, all the mentorship they provided, exploring as much as I can, and that really helped put me in a position where I realized, something like a physician scientist was something that I found fulfilling and wanted to pursue.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And you kind of mentioned that, I guess, but going into college, you were more interested like in the medical side. So you joined Scope PHA, obviously.
Yes, I did.
And could you share a little bit about how maybe you first learned about Scope PHA and like why you were interested in joining? Anything at all?
Sure, yeah. I learned about Scope PHA from, you probably have heard of it, UCLA's Med Mentors.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, UCLA's Med Mentors. There was a Scope PHA alum. I think she's graduating med school. Her name's Holly. She made a really convincing pitch about Scope PHA. When I was at one of their info sessions, I think on like one of the first weeks. It was like virtual week 0 or something like that. That's how I found out about PHA. I also found out that their application was due in like a week.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And so, yeah, I think a lot of it is the stars aligning. And another big part of it was that I had, during COVID, I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts. And one podcast that stuck out to me a lot was one that focused on transportation and healthcare. And they were specifically looking at a case study out in Florida about how, a clinic was noticing a lot of patients were missing visits, and they started asking why. And they realized that out in Florida, a lot of these patients just didn't have a way to get to the clinic. The public transport infrastructure wasn't there, or they didn't have a car. And they founded a program to try to address that. And that to me was, a great way of thinking outside of the box. It's something that when you realize and look in hindsight, it's such an obvious answer that, you have to, in order for people to benefit from medicine, they need to be at the clinic first. And so this sort of upstreamist thinking, fit perfectly when I, saw Scope PHA's mission statement. And I think, ever since then, it's just kind of coalesced together. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to pivot now and talk a little bit about some of your other interests as well, because you did double major in both neuroscience and design media arts. So I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about like where that interest came from, because I myself also am like I also love doing art and design. So.
Sure, yeah. And just so for some context, the Design Media Arts program at UCLA is a wonderful program. They focus sort of a mission statement on what are these sort of modern mediums of art. And so imagine like typography, imagine like 3D, 3D design, etc., web design, a lot of these modern mediums. And how does that art practice exist? What can you do as a practicing artist, but also how does that connect back to society and technology and influence? How does it allow us to look at ourselves, literally and figuratively? But I think for me, it took me a long time to figure out how to combine these passions. I sort of always had a separate interest in biology and a separate interest in art. But it really came to me sort of in the later years as I started, focusing a lot more of my scientific practice on what's known as, brain-computer interfaces or BCI. That's sort of a very rapidly developing space in neuroscience, and combining that with some of the social and technological reflection that the design media arts program does, the reflection on how can we use art, for instance, you hear a lot about, say, Web 2.0, Web 3.0. What does that say about us and our relationship to technology? And seeing how those two facets can be combined, that's where it sort of all started. And that's where I imagine a lot of my research practice going, both scientifically, but also artistically. Because, these advancements don't exist in a vacuum. I imagine they'll come right back into our daily lives. And so what does that mean about where we're headed? We don't know.
Mm. Oh, wait, so just to clarify, so this brain-computer interface thing that you mentioned, is it like an integration of kind of like science and art, or what exactly is like this? I feel like
Sure, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So brain-computer interfaces, that's a great question. At the moment is much more of a medical advancement. And so, for instance, for Parkinson's patients, there are technologies such as deep brain stimulation for patients that may not respond well or effectively to drugs for Parkinson's. We're able to put devices that can electrically stimulate their brain to almost immediately resolve their symptoms. And so these patients, it's very dramatic. They turn on their device, their tremors for Parkinson's are gone. Um, and so right now, it's a lot of the times it's confined to the medical sphere, but we're seeing more and more it being used not just for, say, Parkinson's, but also for cases like depression, for epilepsy, etc. And a lot of this advancement at the moment is still mostly for medical purposes, but you're also seeing companies such as, for instance, Neuralink. It's Musk company. I'd like to call them, well, it's Musk company, but it's a great picture of sort of the space that consumer technologies as well as consumer businesses are getting involved in this space. There's a lot more. Everyone approaches it kind of differently, but they're using it not only for instance, monitoring productivity or monitoring emotional states as a form of therapy. There's different ways to understand what our brain is doing, how we can better leverage that information to, induce recovery, but also be more productive in our daily lives. And so there's a lot of potential behind the scenes for brain computer interfaces, but there's also a lot of, I guess, vagueness of what exactly that potential means. And so using both science and art to get ahead of it is something I'm interested in.